Let's go ahead and get to our Ask David segment. We ask you to submit questions to us on Facebook at David Star Podcast, Twitter at Star Podcast, email davidstarpodcast@gmail.com. You can write to us there. And we have questions for both David and Stanton here. And so let's go ahead and get to our first question from the inbox. This one, it comes from Mike. Mike wants to know, this question's for Stanton. Stanton, tell us about your bobsled challenge that you were a part of.
Oh man, the bobsled race was super fun. I don't know how much time we have here, but so when I was growing up, my mom was a World Cup skier, Olympic skier, ski all the way. My grandpa coached U.S. ski team. So winter sports I loved, right? And the only time you got to see bobsled was in the Olympics. They didn't air it back in the 80s when I was a kid or 70s. They aired it for the Olympics. So I used to stay up and watch ski jumping because I always wanted to ski jump. And I watched bobsledding, and they always aired super late. My mom would stay up with me. So when Jeff got involved with the bobsled, he's like, I'm like, dude, I love bobsled. Anytime I have an opportunity, like, come hang out, whatever. I want to go see it, help, whatever. And I was racing a lot then, and so they came up with this bobsled challenge thing, and we all went up there. And Dick Trickle, Boris, myself, I don't know. There was a Lucas, the drag racer. There was a bunch of guys. We had so much fun. It was one of the best weekends I've had. And so then I got with the guy who ran the bobsled stuff, did the TV stuff, and then they pitched it to ESPN, I think it was on at the time. And like, well, let's make Stanton like go from this NASCAR driver never really racing bobsled, and let's put him in competition. So I actually got to race on like the real deal.
Wow.
I went to Calgary. I went to Calgary and trained with the Olympic guys for like 2 months. I raced the North America Cup race there against World Cup guys. I got in the top 6 against guys who've been in the World Cup. And then they're like, because the goal was to get me to go race a 4-run the World Cup at Lake Placid, and then do a whole show about training. Because I've, professional motocross race trained, and all the car racing, how it correlates, how technology correlates mental. So we did these shows, and they aired them just before the bobsled races every weekend. Maybe it was on Speed that was on then. But anyways, I had so much fun. I went to Calgary, froze my butt off for 2.5 months, trained with them. And I'm small. I'm like this kind of guy, but I could run quick for a little bit. But that was my disadvantage, is I'm small, and I'm pushing even a heavier sled because it has to meet the weight. But yeah, that bobsled thing was so fun. Then I went to class. I did the national championships, and then we're like, well, he's good enough. He's not going to 4-run. Let's keep racing like real races. I bought sleds, really competitive Olympic sleds that won medals to help the U.S. team guys that didn't have, because there's a discrepancy. That's why Jeff got involved. We didn't have good equipment. The depth of the equipment wasn't great. So I bought sleds and provided them for guys. One of the guys won the national championships in one of my sleds, and then got on the World Cup team and got to race World Cup. I've helped the Australian guy, didn't have a sled. Let him use my sleds, and he made the last Olympics because he qualified with a competitive sled. I helped this Brazilian kid. I've helped some of the Brazilian girls and English girls. So it's since then I've been helping athletes, because my mom went through a lot in the Olympics and World Cup and stuff. And there's a real need to help athletes there with equipment. They don't make money. A lot of them don't. They're just passionate about what they do. They work harder than anybody you can imagine. So that all rooted from being around winter sports and loving, because I didn't grow up around bobsled. We didn't have ski, even though I jumped some of the biggest cliffs you could ever imagine. I didn't have ski. So those are things I always wanted to do. So Jeff made that happen, and we had such a great time. That was one of the funnest. Talk about a real race car. When you're in trouble in a race car, you can lift and get on the brakes, right?
Right.
You're not saving it. You're going down, and you're going down fast, and it's violent, and things come at you fast, and if you don't anticipate it, you're crashing.
Sam, did you ever crash?
I crashed twice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I crashed once in Calgary. And that's what they impressed. I went to Lake Placid. It was the toughest track in the world, and I never and never crashed. And they're like, how's it? But I understood fall lines from skiing and lines from motocross and car racing, right? So using the fall line and anticipating movements and seat of the pant feel for motocross and cars, all that applied to the bobsled and just slight touches. So it is probably one of the absolute funnest things I've ever done.
Wow.
Talk about exhilarate. Like, you don't get that in a race car, right? The speed becomes relative.
Right.
Everybody's going the same speed. We're used to that, right? Indianapolis was pretty cool. That was pretty fast, going 230 into a corner that you don't think you can make. And you're like, okay, hold it wide open and hope to make it. But in a bobsled, you know, it's this wide.
Right.
Then it opens up in these turns and you're dropping 20 feet down into the next turn. And
Wow.
you're, you know, just think about how you have to look ahead at Bristol or Darlington.
Sure.
Well, you can't look that far ahead. Like, the corners are so tight. You're trying to look ahead, and it's violent, and you're trying to look at your line, but look far ahead. Well, you know, the peripheral, because some of them are so sharp, or when they put the covers on the tracks, then you really can't look ahead, and you really got to go off of feel and memory. It's crazy, because when you get behind, you're like, you got to catch up somehow, and it's like caution to the wind. Like, you just because the only control you have is steering. It's like, oh, I screwed up, I'm gonna just put the brakes on and regroup. There's no regrouping. You're along for the ride.
Wow.
It's pretty wild.